You're listening to a special interview segment for the official podcast for WrestlingNewsSource.com.
Okay, folks, joining us on the show this week, he is the second longest reigning Ring of Honor world champion in ROH history. He is a Ring of Honor legend, Nigel McGuinness. Mr. McGuinness, welcome to the show.
Nice to be here, boys. How are you?
Oh, we are doing fantastic.
Good.
Certainly happy that you could join us this week. Got a lot going on in your world. You're here to discuss your Kickstarter that is now underway for LA Fights. It's a brand new concept. Could you tell us a little bit about LA Fights for those of the listeners who don't know about it?
Yeah, it's a 6-episode TV series, so it's not a new promotion, essentially. What I've done is I've sort of taken everything I've learned over the last 10, 12, 15 years of being in professional wrestling, and I've kind of evolved it in all the ways that I feel would evolve it properly to fit into the space in the market right now. I think that a lot of people that were pro wrestling fans have gone over to MMA or I'd start watching anymore. They want a more realistic, more adult sort of themed show with the storylines and the in-ring style closer to MMA, something a little bit more believable and realistic as well. So I've written a 6-episode series that, as I said, I think pushes pro wrestling in all of the directions I've mentioned. I mean, nothing that I'm suggesting, I think, any of the integral parts are probably things that everybody has thought about themselves. You guys probably have as well. Maybe you watch shows like Breaking Bad or Sons of Anarchy or stuff like that and thought, man, why can't there be a wrestling product like this? Or maybe you've watched the in-ring style and think, yeah, every now and again, yeah, you know, maybe some of this stuff just doesn't work nowadays, like having someone in a sleeper hold and seeing his arm drop twice before it stops and he fights back out again, you know. There are a lot of these sort of changes that a lot of people have suggested over the years, but no one's ever really put everything together into one concise package project and put a price tag on it as well. And a lot of people have reached out to me and said, you know, I've had similar ideas, and so I know I'm on the right scheme, I know I'm in the right direction, but what I've done, as I said, is I've got something that's ready to go. This isn't an idea. I'm not asking for money so I can develop that idea. I've done that for the last year. I've got together with friends in TV, friends in MMA, and friends in pro wrestling, and I've sort of evolved the style in ring so that it's more believable and engaging. I've written these storylines within a 6-episode series within a script such that you'll care more about the characters and therefore care more about the actual in-ring stuff as well, and I built it all to a second season so that if this takes off and this does well and we get a big sort of fan base behind it, then a bigger company or a bigger TV channel can come on for a second season and we really can reinvent and reinvigorate the industry.
Absolutely. And for more information on that, you can go to lafights.com. It'll take you straight to the Kickstarter, so you can see all the information, see all the gifts that you can receive for donating. It's a really cool project, and I watched the video not too long ago where you did state that you wanted to make it perfectly clear you're not looking to compete against WWE, TNA, Ring of Honor. You're looking to make this its own entity.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, like I said, I think everybody, and it's been time and time again that we've heard, you know, a new promotion come up, and we're going to do this, and we're going to change this, and it's my genuine feeling is that I don't think you can present this sort of a product 52 weeks a year, and I think if you people ask me why isn't WWE doing something similar to this, because it's very difficult to do that 52 weeks a year. It's very difficult because you have to have that much new content a year. You can't do it with a show like Breaking Bad or any of those scripted shows. You know, I think that's one of the evolutionary changes that I'm sort of pushing for, is a seasonal structure, because I believe not only will it enable you to build to highly anticipated season finales, on top of that, it will give guys time off to heal and recover from injuries, which when you're wrestling 52 weeks a year isn't quite so easily.
Right. It's
I mean, in watching it, though, guys, I mean, you guys have seen the pitch videos, of course. You've seen I've got about $22,000 so far and back, as I'm asking for $370 altogether. Did you guys have any questions? Are there any issues with it? I mean, what do you think? Anybody has any concerns about the project? I've tried to address it. I've done a couple of videos. I've done some I did a Reddit AMA as well last Monday, and I want to be completely open and transparent with what I'm doing. I'm not going to put out this project and go, here, let's take it or leave it, either get behind this. If people have issues or concerns or interest or something's not completely clear, I'm totally available on Facebook or Twitter or lafights.com. You can send me a message on there and ask me whatever you think. But in terms of what you guys have seen, what questions did you have?
Well, from the videos, I feel like it's pretty clear, you know, and it's you and your friends are all talking about it, and it's pretty clear.
Well, that's great. I mean, fantastic, good.
Something that does pop into my head, you are saying that you're wanting it to be a more believable storyline, and as far as the wrestling aspect, the in-ring action, we do know your policy or your thoughts as far as blood in the wrestling industry, especially of what happened in your career. Would that be something that might be featured? Because I do know that in more believable fights, like in the UFC, blood is a pretty constant thing. So, what's your stance on that happening?
It certainly is a storyline I could have employed, and I think really I'm saving it to a second season when arguably it would fit better then. To be honest with you, well, I sat down and I thought, what storylines are there in pro wrestling, sort of behind the scenes right now, that is easily digestible and people can really get a hold of? Mm-hmm. And really, the blood issue didn't figure that highly. Because obviously a big portion of my issue with blood is the intentional blood loss, and therefore within a scripted show where what I'm presenting is as real, then intentional blood loss is neither here nor there. There certainly is the possibility for a storyline in terms of the unintentional, but that would obviously be talking about making sure that guys get tested and stuff like that, and that's another storyline perhaps for a second season.
Absolutely. I can make a whole mini-series on that.
I just love this idea that this could be like seasons. Oh, have you seen this season of the show? And it has it could be drama, it could be comedy, and it's wrestling, and that's just so cool. And another thing that we also talk about on our show from time to time is a little crossover thing sometimes between pro wrestling and comic books. And sorry, I know this is a different organization, but it kind of reminds me a little bit, maybe like Chikara, because they do comic book related stuff too at times, and superheroes. Could that be a possible thing too for your show? Like maybe later on down the line, maybe like a little superhero thing or something.
What do you mean by a superhero thing?
Or I meant like someone could be a superhero, or like I don't know, take some ideas from a comic book. I don't know.
I'm trying to ground it more in reality. I haven't seen a lot of what Chikara does, but I think they have a fantastic product that appeals to a certain niche audience that watches their shows. And I think that's what they do so well, is that they are categorically different, and they put something out there that isn't the same as everything else out there. And because of it, they have a wonderfully loyal fan base that supports the product. But in terms of what I'm doing, I think I'd steer clear of superheroes or anything like that, because I genuinely believe what I'm trying to push is the realism of people and how characters are shades of grey. Okay. People don't need to be able to fly. They just need to be able to care, and people need to sort of see that side of them. And I think that arguably, certainly on a mainstream level, we haven't seen those sort of characters perhaps even for 10 or 15 years. I think if you look at Steve Austin, he was certainly a shades of grey guy that obviously you could say to a large extent, worked like a heel a lot of the time, but was cheered by a lot of the fan base, and I think that's the sort of character that people get behind.
Yeah, definitely.
And in your video, you have people like Jimmy Jacobs and Colt Cabana, saying that this is what the wrestling business needs. Are they going to be featured in your show? Who? I don't. You don't have to spoil everything, but who are some of the people we might be able to look forward to?
At this point, no one's guaranteed a spot in there. What I've done is I've written characters, and I've got a couple of people in mind for a couple of those characters. But that will become part of the casting process once it gets funded. Because A, I need to make sure the guys can wrestle that certain style, and B, I need to make sure they're available, and C, I need to make sure they've got the acting chops, and D, I need to make sure that whatever characters I've written already, part of that character coexists with the person in real life. For example, I have a character that's homosexual, therefore I can't ask someone to play that character, and unless really they are homosexual, or certainly unless they really have the acting ability to pull that off. I mean, that's part of my theory behind writing these storylines, is that wrestlers aren't great actors, and I'm the perfect example of that. I can sort of play myself turned up to 10. I can, play Nigel McGuinness, but I can't do anything else. And I kind of sort of saw that being out here in Los Angeles and going to auditions and trying to be something totally that I'm not, and just can't pull it off. You can't pull it off at all. And I don't think in pro wrestling we need it, because everybody has their own storylines, I mean, everybody, there's a storyline about ambition, about a guy that is married and has 2 kids, and his wife is constantly saying, I don't want to keep doing this, you're going to get hurt. You're not making enough money, you can get a good job with my dad and you can make some money. Why do you keep having to go away every weekend? You've got kids who are growing up and you hardly ever see them because you're either at work or you're away at the weekend. I mean, that in and of itself is a storyline that will get people engaged into the character. And we don't need to put those sort of characters in anybody that can't experience it in the real world, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like one of those behind-the-scenes stories that, you hear about, but you never really get to see, unless they portray it in the movie The Wrestler. Like, this is, I mean,
yeah.
The more you're talking about it, the more it's intriguing me. I'm curious as to what else y'all have going. But this isn't your first project on Kickstarter. You also had a previous one for your documentary, The Last of McGuinness. It got very positive feedback from wrestling fans. I myself own a copy. I actually purchased it from you WrestleMania weekend when y'all were in New Orleans, and you were kind enough to sign it. But it's a very raw story of you dealing your final days as a in-ring competitor. How did you react to the feedback that you received on the documentary?
I mean, as you see from watching the documentary, so much of my sort of resolution to my career was the support from fans all over the world to get the first Kickstarter funded. And then when people watched the finished product, and there were so many overwhelmingly positive reviews, and even today, I'm still getting emails and letters from people who've seen it and sort of expressed what a positive effect it had on them and their life and where they were in their life, and they were questioning certain things, and sort of to see that somebody that even to a small extent was on, on TV in a relatively famous level, dealing with the same things that they dealt with. It really helped them out, they said. So it's been really helpful. And, it certainly did inspire a lot of my thoughts with the LA Fights project, because I thought, a lot of these very realistic ideas about people pursuing their dreams and ambitions, irrespective of whether you see beyond the curtain, whereas you see the choreographed nature of it to some extent, or you don't. Either way, it's still the same sort of universal themes in life that people want to watch and sort of get behind. So it's a big part of it, and I put the documentary up for free on YouTube this past weekend just to show people that, this is what I'm capable of if people get behind me and back a Kickstarter, because that's the reality of the world that we live in. I mean, some of the concerns that people have had, and rightly so, is the fact there are so many Kickstarter projects out there, and a lot of them very valid, so I'm not taking anything away from that. But at the same time, there's been a lot of Kickstarters that either people who backed them felt they didn't really get their money's worth and it wasn't the product they wanted, or even worse, they didn't get any product whatsoever, because legally, essentially, there's no absolute way you're guaranteed of getting it. So all you can do is you're not really backing the project, you're backing the person. So you can't look other projects. All you can do is look at the person, look at what they did in the past, and, see whether you think that they'll do the same thing again. And, I asked for money for a documentary. I got the money, and I made the documentary. And as you said, it's had overwhelmingly positive reviews. So, I think that gives me equity somewhat to say I can do the same thing again with this project. I'm not just asking for a certain amount of money and going, I'll give this a shot. I put a lot of work over the last year in writing the script. My friend out here, who's a producer, he budgeted it professionally. And this, $307,000, don't get me wrong, it sounds like a lot of money, and it is a lot of money. But to shoot a 6-episode series, it really isn't that much at all. In actual fact, if we were doing this in an ideal world where I could ask for any amount whatsoever, I would ask for at least $1 million, if not $1.5 million, to do it exactly the way I want. But as it is, I know I'm never going to get that through a Kickstarter. So I said, look, what's the minimum amount that we can shoot? It's the bare bones. So I can guarantee we will get a good product out there, and that's $370, because I have to pay back the Kickstarter takes a cut. I have to pay taxes on it. I have to put money aside to mail out all the rewards and make all the rewards, so that takes a lot of the money out as well. And a lot of people don't sort of figure that, and that's why a lot of these projects aren't seeing completion, because they go, well, how much do I need to make this? Great. And they'll ask for it, and if they get it, then wait a second, what do I do with everything else? And so I've done this. It isn't my first day in the park. This isn't my first Kickstarter. I had a very successful one with a documentary. I made sure everybody got their rewards for that. And so that's all I can say, boys. All I can say is I've had this idea for a long time, and I felt like it was time to pull the trigger, trying to put it out there and see how much interest there is within the professional wrestling demographic, see how many people really want to see something different out there and want to get behind it and support it, because I've heard it time and time again. I hear it all the time. I don't spend a lot of time on the internet in chat rooms or any of that sort of stuff. But I do see it on Twitter every now and again, and it's usually on Monday nights where people are complaining, I can't stand the product anymore and I hate it, and why they're insulting our intelligence, etc., etc., etc. Well, now there is the opportunity to get behind something that is different, that is not going to insult your intelligence, is going to put pro wrestling on the sort of level of those shows that everyone rave about on social media. It's there, it's the opportunity, and if people get behind it, it can become a reality. And that's all I can do. I'm going to continue to push it on social media and tell everybody I possibly can about it. I'm making more pitch videos. I'm answering anybody's questions that has any concerns about it. I can't do any more than that, and to a certain extent, I've sort of come to peace with it. I put a lot of work into this. I feel I have a great product, and I'm going to work as hard as I possibly can until the end of January, whether this gets funded or not.
And I don't, after I watched the video and after I saw the things, I'm like, how can you not back this? This is just, like you said, this is what I know I feel like I want, You're
sitting at home on Monday nights and frustrated, and, well, here's your chance to help not only be a part of it, but help create it.
That just so cool, man, so cool.
So in the grand scheme of it all, say the Kickstarter is successful, you get some extra cash to make it happen. Would you be looking for maybe like a TV deal? Would this be an online exclusive? What, would you be looking at Netflix?
Well, that's the beauty of Kickstarter, is that I have carte blanche in terms of where I put it out there. If a production company makes this, then they have to make their investment back straight away, which means, it may sit on the cutting room floor for a long time, or maybe the only deal they can get was with a small channel that a lot of people aren't going to be able to see. It's not going to have get the eyes on it. It really will need to reinvent the industry. And now we live in a world where, just look at YouTube. You put it up on YouTube, you get 10 million views, and you're set. You are set for a second season. People are going to get behind that. So that's an option. As you mentioned, Hulu, you mentioned Netflix. There are other platforms. Amazon is looking into creating new content as well. Or even going traditional routes by trying to get it on a channel like FX or HBO or stuff like that. I have the contacts out here to get meetings with people in these companies, but I'll be honest with you, they are being pitched 100 ideas every day, and they're not going to put money into something unless they think it's the hot thing. And I hate to say it, but this is the reason why I'm writing it. Pro wrestling isn't the hot thing anymore, and it hasn't been the hot thing for 10 years. So, when people hear pro wrestling, they don't want to touch it. I sort of applaud the thing on the El Rey network they're trying to do with that. I think the in-ring style is obviously still catering to the lucha fan base, which is fine in and of itself, but I don't think necessarily it's going to cross over to a more mainstream base, whereas I feel my project, because it is more digestible and, with the popularity of MMA, that I think it will, really do some big things.
Absolutely. I'd like to talk about your career just a little bit. I know you were trained under Les Thatcher, so obviously you're very well skilled in the ring, obviously. Were there any people backstage, in the past few years who have seemed to, ask you for advice, or someone that you might have taken under your wing to help train?
No one specifically, but certainly Ring of Honor, and that's part of the reason I love working for that company and will continue to do so, is because a lot of the guys have sort of come to me at various points, either before shows or off to the side after shows, and sort of asked me about certain ideas they've been doing, or asked me to watch matches and everything else like that. So there's a number of those sort of guys that, still really are coming into their own now. Guys like Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly, and the list goes on. Tommaso Ciampa, there really is so much talent there in Ring of Honor that it's a blessing for me to still be involved.
Very nice. And you did spend some time over in TNA working as Desmond Wolfe. What was it like working with Kurt Angle and your feud with that?
Yeah, one of the highlights of my career and life. It really is. I mean, he's for a guy who's certainly arguably the best wrestler of my generation. To be that humble and to be that open to work with a guy like me who's come in essentially from a smaller company, it was marvelous. Like most of the best wrestlers I've ever been in there with, they took what I did and they put it in the right places. Whether it's Dragon or Joe or Aries or Christopher Daniels, it's the same thing. You'll get a lot of great wrestlers that will go out there and they'll be able to have their match. They do their match. You sort of have to try and fit in within their match. But a guy who's like Kurt Angle or any of those guys that I mentioned that are so malleable, they know how to take the best things out of anybody, put it in the right places, and that's why they've had the sort of legacy and the amount of fantastic matches that they have.
Very cool. And, we're talking about LA Fights and how it's going to be presented as sort of a, more behind the scenes kind of feel, really good vibe. We always like to try whenever we have guests on to get some behind the scenes stories, maybe like a favorite road story or a favorite rib or anything like that. Do you have any favorite stories to tell?
Not really. I mean, those sort of stories come out after a few beers, hanging out in the pubs after the show, certainly not the sort of time to get them out right now. I mean, I was doing a Reddit AMA and they had a few of those same sort of questions, and the one I always come back to was after a Ring of Honor show where we got snowed in New Jersey or New York or somewhere god awful, and we were there for like 3 or 4 days stuck in this hotel, and it was me, Dragon, and Cabana and a few other people or whatever else, so none of us could get flown out for like 2 or 3 days. Dragon was getting a little bit stir crazy in the hotel and was on the phone with one of the airlines trying to get his flight back to, I believe he lived in Washington at the time, but somewhere on the West Coast. And he was on hold for like 4 hours, and then Cabana called his cell phone from another phone in the hotel, pretending to be the airline, and said, "Look, we've got you a connection, but it's out of Philadelphia now, so you've got to get to Philadelphia within an hour." And he's in like New York at the time, what I mean? So he just kept playing on like that and suggesting more and more like ridiculous ways for him to get from New York to Philadelphia, asking him to borrow a bike from somebody and stuff like that. Meanwhile, Dragon was getting more and more irate until he finally started figuring it out. But it was a good time.
That's awesome.
Very funny. Well, like I said, you can go to lafights.com to support the Kickstarter for Mr. McGuinness. Really cool. You can also go to nigelwrestling.com. You can follow Mr. McGuinness at McGuinnessNigel on Twitter. Really cool to have you on the show. It's been an honor to talk to you. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
No worries, guys. Well, I appreciate your time. As I said, just keep telling people about the project, get behind it in every way that you can. The more people hear about this, and eventually I think, we'll really get some big numbers. I'm really proud and really happy with so many people that sort of backed me so far. As I said, we're up to nearly $22,000. That's over 200 people that put their hard-earned cash into this project, and especially at this time of year where there's not necessarily that much money to go around, it really means the world to me. I've got a lot of faith that as long as people keep believing in this, we can make it a reality. Any help you can do, boys, the better. Thank you.
We will definitely help, and you have a great night. Thanks for coming on.
All right, boys. All the best. Take care. Be safe.
Take care.
Later, Nigel.
Ciao.